Nandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanacharya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jai Om Vishnu Paramhamsa Parivrajakaacharya Ashtotar Sata Shri Srimad Abhay Charnar Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vikas Swami Namane Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 6 titled Dhyana Yoga, text 37. Please repeat. Arjuna Uvacha Ayatihi Shraddhaya Upetaha Yogat Chalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhayopeto Yogachalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhayopeto Yogachalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhayopeto Yogachalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati. Please repeat. Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhayopeto achalitamaanasaha prapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim Krishna gacchati. Arjuna uvacha ayati shraddhayopeto yogacchalitamanasaha aprapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim Krishna gacchati. Shraddhayopeto gacchalitamanasaha prapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim Krishna gacchati. Arjuna uvacha ayati shraddhayopeto gacchalitamanasaha prapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim Krishna gacchati. Matajis. Arjuna uvacha ayati shraddhayopeto yogacchalitamanasaha prapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim Krishna gacchati. Arjuna uvacha ayati shraddhayopeto yogacchalitamanasaha prapya yoga samsiddhim kamgatim Krishna gacchati. Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna said, Hayatihi, the unsuccessful transcendentalist, Shraddhaya, with faith, Upetaha, engaged, Yogat, from the mystic link, Chalita, deviated, Manasaha, who has such a mind, Aprapya, failing to attain, Yoga Samsiddhim, the highest perfection in mysticism, Kam, which, Gatim, destination, Krishna, O Krishna, Gacchati, achieves. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist, who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but later who desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? Purport. The path of self-realization or mysticism is described in the Bhagavad Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body, but that he is different from it, and that his happiness is in eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. These are transcendental, beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, by the practice of the eightfold system, or by bhakti yoga. In each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity, his relationship with God, and the activities whereby he can re-establish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. Following any one of the above mentioned three methods, one is sure to reach the supreme goal sooner or later. This was asserted by the Lord in the second chapter. Even a little endeavor on the transcendental path offers a great hope for deliverance. Out of these three methods, the path of bhakti yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. To be doubly assured, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to confirm his former statement. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, the process of cultivation of knowledge, and the practice but the process of cultivation of knowledge and the practice of the eightfold yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be sufficiently serious about following the process. To pursue the transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusory energy. Consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. A conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called yoga chalita manasaha, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shriyutav Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarjatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sa Advaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindho Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Arjuna Uvacha Ayati Shraddhayopeto Yoga Chalita Manasaha Aprapya Yoga Samsiddhim Kam Gatim Krishna Gacchati. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? So, here Arjuna asks a question which is a little different to the question he asked in the second chapter, for which Krishna gives the statement that even a little endeavor in the transcendental path offers great hope for deliverance. And the difference, so the question that Krishna is asking over here is that after one has taken up to the process of self-realization, if one fails, and Arjuna is very clear about why one might fail. He says, one who takes the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness. So, the Bhagavad Gita, as Srila Prabhupada begins in the beginning of this purport, he says that the path of self-realization or mysticism is described in the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is Yoga Shastra. It is a text that describes a few fundamental things for which one needs to have to attain self-realization, without which one cannot attain self-realization. What are those things? Prabhupada says in the purport, in each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity, his relationship with God, the activities whereby he can establish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. So 3. Achieving the highest stage could be said to be the 4th, but here Srila Prabhupada combines the 3rd and 4th. So Bhagavad Gita describes these 3 things. What are the 3 things? Who are we? What is our constitutional position? Who are we? What is this spirit soul that occupies this body? What is our constitutional position of the living entity? Second, his relationship with God. Even if we may understand that there might be a supreme being, there might be God, what is our relationship with him? This has to be understood. To understand that relationship is what forms yoga. Otherwise there is no yoga. Yoga means to link. Right? Even right now, Supreme Personality of Godhead is there. God is there. and we are here. But self-realization is termed as yoga because this living entity is trying to connect with that supreme entity, which is God. Until that connection is established, there is no yoga. Yoga means to connect. Yoga is not just some exercises or some stretches or things like that. Yoga actually means to link. It's not enough to merely accept the existence of a supreme being or God or anything like that. We have to understand who we are, and we have to understand our position and our relation and our position in relationship to that supreme entity, who is the source of everything, without which there is no yoga. Okay, now that has been established, what is the next thing? Activities by which he can re-establish the lost link. So we understand that there is a constitutional position. Now we have to re-establish that link. There are some activities required to re-establish that link. Why do we have to re-establish the link? Because the link was forgotten. The link has been cut. Right now we are existing in this material world. People are existing out there without any care for these things. They don't even know who they are. So this has all been forgotten. How can this be revived? And how can the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness be achieved? Krishna is that Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Krishna consciousness means to be conscious of Him all the time. This is the ultimate process this is the ultimate stage of perfection, is to always remember Krishna and never forget Him. Smartavya satatam Vishnor vismartavya na jatuchit sarvavidhi nishedasyur etayoreva kinkaraha. That Smartavya satatam Vishnu, that we always have to remember Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Smartavya satatam Vishnor, and then what? We should also never forget Him. Vismartavya na jatuchit. We should not forget Him. This is a double emphasis. It's saying the same thing but twice. Is to emphasize. Always drink water and never stop drinking water. You can't do that, but just to give an example. Always breathe and never stop breathing. So it's just to emphasize, saying the same thing again. And then Sarvavidhi Nishedasyur, that all the processes of self-realization, all the different rules and regulations, all the different scriptures is a servant of this principle. Sarvavidhi Nishedasur etayoreva kinkarha. That whatever we may perform in life, whatever activity we may perform in life, if that does not help us remember Krishna, if that does not help us never forget Him, then that is useless. That process is useless. So, please come in. You have to take your shoes off. Sorry. This is called yoga. Now, in this process of yoga, Krishna is explaining three primary processes of yoga. At least Prabhupada here describes three in this purport. What are those three? He says that three methods. The three methods are, let me see here. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, by the path of eightfold system, by the practice of the eightfold system, or by bhakti yoga. So one can achieve this process of self-realization through knowledge, or through the path of eightfold mystic yoga, or through the process of Krishna consciousness or devotional service. Now, Prabhupada states here in the purport that one may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation of knowledge and the practice of the eightfold yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Why? Because in the path of knowledge, one is still thinking that one is attempting to gain knowledge. You're still the center of your endeavor. You think by your endeavor, I will acquire knowledge, I will understand everything, and I will become perfect. This is what is the process of knowledge. And process of eightfold mystic yoga, what is that? That begins by, through different processes such as pranayama, yoga asanas, meditation. Ultimately, it leads to meditation. And in these meditation processes, the emphasis is on one's endeavor to disconnect oneself, disconnect the senses from worldly objects, pull the mind away from these things, and focus it on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Still, one is doing all this with the conception that one is achieving self-realization through one's endeavor. It is because of my endeavor. I have to endeavor like this. I have to perform these processes. Okay, does that mean that in Bhakti Yoga there is no devotional service, Krishna consciousness that we are being taught by Srila Prabhupada here does not involve endeavor? There is endeavor. But ultimately, we depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We depend on the mercy of Krishna. This is where the difference is. And because there is endeavor, Srila Prabhupada makes the point here that because the misconception is one is primarily relying on one's endeavor, one has still not understood that if one were very strong, or one can become very strong, one would have not gotten conditioned in the first place. Maya, or the illusory energy, which has conditioned us, what is that conditioning? That conditioning right now is so strong that we have forgotten ourselves. We think that we're these bodies. We think that we can gain happiness through the senses. We think that whatever our mind tells us or how our mind feels is how we are supposed to feel. We do not recognize that the spirit soul, for instance, the mind may feel that if I do not obtain this particular variety of sense gratification, if I'm not allowed to eat this particular thing right now, I am very unhappy and I am depressed. But this is illusion. This is Maya. The spirit soul has nothing to do with that. The spirit soul will exist whether that happiness is offered or not. The spirit soul continues to exist upon the destruction of this body. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada writes here, the basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body, but that he is different from it, and that his happiness is in eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. So this is the basic principle of yoga, of self-realization. We're not these bodies, right? And we are different. So we are not these bodies. We are different from it. And so that's interesting. We are not these bodies. So are we something, but we're not even anything similar to it. We are completely different. And our happiness is in eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. So eternal life. We want something eternal. We want it to be full of knowledge, and we want it to be full of bliss. This is where our happiness lies. The living entity has forgotten this. Why? Because the living entity is desirous to enjoy separately from Krishna. We have forgotten our relationship with God. Not only have we forgotten our relationship with God, most of the time when we are reminded this, we are not willing to accept it. This is the rebellious nature of the conditioned living entity. Because the conditioned living entity, the Bhadatma, or the Jivatma, which is the Jiva, the living entity, which is conditioned in material existence, likes to always think himself as the center of everything. And this misconception is not completely rooted out in the process of knowledge and mystic yoga. Why? Because one has not fully surrendered onto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why? Because one still holds on to whatever little one can hold on, thinking that whatever little endeavor or whatever ability the living entity has is capable of using that to achieve perfection or self-realization. But actually, the living entity is very minuscule. The living entity can be easily covered by the illusory energy. Very, very easily covered by the illusory energy. And what's more, there is something called worldly mindedness. This worldly mindedness comes about because of our past activities. Every conditioned living entity has a history of being conditioned. And that history of conditioning is not that easy to give up. And because of that history of conditioning, even while pursuing a transcendental path, when the living entity, through the workings of Maya, as it said here, consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. And these allurements are described in Shastra as like fragrances. So they are described like fragrances. So when you have a very strong fragrance, and you smell that fragrance, it transports you to a particular place, whichever place we connect with that fragrance. You may, and therefore one can understand nostalgia. Nostalgia is like that. When you feel nostalgic, you're suddenly kind of like transported. You feel kind of like unreal, surreal. You don't know, like, wow, so many things have changed. Where am I? What is this? Or like that. And you kind of get nostalgic. And it almost stuns you sometimes. So Maya, illusory energy, does that. It passes those fragrances by. And the conditioned living entity is allured by that because he was previously attracted to those things. And being attracted to those things, what happens? So Prabhupada writes here, a conditioned soul is already allured by the modes of material nature, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called yoga chalita manasaha, deviation from the transcendental path. So yoga chalita, so yoga, so that's the process of self-realization. Chalita means to deviate. Manasaha refers to mindset. It refers to the mindset. It refers to the mindset of becoming deviated. And that mindset of deviation happens because the mind is still attracted to the allurements that the illusory energy offers to him. Therefore, even while escaping, he kind of gets pulled back. Now, why are we talking all these things? Because in the process of knowledge and the process of mystic yoga, because one is so dependent on one's own endeavor, it's harder to resist those temptations. Because it really, really depends on one's endeavor, and that endeavor can always be imperfect. Because you're still relying on your own endeavor. And the living entity, however strong or sincere one may be, that living entity is not powerful enough to overcome Maya. By nature, he is superior to Maya, but still, in terms of quantity, he can easily be influenced because he's minuscule. Therefore, one has to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One has to take up to the process of Krishna consciousness. One has to recognize that the Supreme Lord is ultimately the controller of both me and that illusory energy. That illusory energy is also under his control. Therefore, if I surrender unto him, he will protect me. And that Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees can ultimately save the conditioned soul. Therefore, the process of bhakti yoga is superior. It is not that the process of bhakti yoga is superior simply because there is a lot less endeavor required. Because we don't sit and study Sanskrit or try to go through the different aspects of the Vedanta Sutra, try to do logical comparisons, and engage in extensive philosophical debates. Nor are we sitting here and engaging in a dry speculation that might not be God, this might not be God, that might not be spiritual, this might not be spiritual. It may be this, it may be that. We don't sit and speculate. Nor are we spending a lot of time trying to curb the senses, trying to create some so-called stillness of mind. The yogis, in order to cultivate tolerance, some of the things that mystic yogis would do, for instance, is to sit in cold, freezing water in the middle of winter, in cold weather when it's practically freezing out there. They will also try, in the heat of summer, to surround themselves with fire, sit right in the middle of that, a circle of fire, sit right in the middle of that with the sun blazing on the top, and sit there and say, I'm not going to be disturbed by this. I'm not going to allow my mind to be disturbed. This is how much they endeavor. They take that endeavor to a whole other level, where they're like, if I can endeavor to if I can put myself into such difficult circumstances, if I can perform austerity of that level, then when the allurement comes, I will not be allured. But they don't recognize that even the greatest personalities in this universe, the great demigods, like Brahma, Indra, all these people are also bewildered by the illusory energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Lord Shiva is bewildered by Vishnu's potency. Therefore, what to speak of a minuscule living entity? So much knowledge. But even people with such high levels of knowledge are also bewildered. Therefore, you have in Shastra, you have great rishis like Bhrigu Muni, who are extremely learned. They are in the heavenly planets, they are extremely learned. They have composed various texts and scriptures. They are sitting there arguing. Who is God? Who is supreme? And they are sitting there arguing. So, these processes will not ultimately help one. One has to depend on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, if it's all mercy, it's interesting. Even in Vaishnava theology and Vaishnava philosophy, there's classes of people who say, well, it's all God's mercy. We don't have to do anything. All we have to say is, Krishna, I'm yours. And then we don't have to do anything. Krishna has to take care. It's like the mother. Or it's like the example that's given is that there is like the baby monkey with the mother monkey. The baby monkey with the mother monkey. So the baby monkey, if you've seen a monkey, it just clings on to the mother. Just clings on to the mother. Doesn't do anything. All it has to do is just cling on to the mother. That's all. If it clings on to the mother, then the mother takes care of it. Then you have the cat. So, but if the baby monkey does not cling to the mother, then the mother doesn't care. This is how it works, actually. If the baby monkey lets go of the mother does not save the baby monkey. So, the baby monkey's protection is dependent on its endeavor to hold on to the mother. Now, the other example that's given is that of a cat with a kitten. The kitten doesn't do anything. You might have noticed that cats don't keep their kittens in one place. They keep moving them. They like to keep moving them around. And the kittens don't do anything. They just stay there, and the mother grabs them by the mouth and moves them to another location, comes and feeds them, and like this, and the kitten doesn't do anything. Cats by general are lazy, so you can imagine what a kitten is like. So, Kitten doesn't do anything. So then that's the other example that people say. Well, it's like God is like that. You don't have to do anything. You just, as long as you recognize that you're, part and parcel of Krishna, you're his servant, you're his child, everything is taken care. You don't have to do anything. So this is the other argument. But Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, the guru of His Divine Grace, is Srila Prabhupada, he said both of these conceptions are wrong. That the example that's given is like a person who's fallen into a well. That a rope is thrown, and yes, we are saved by the person who's pulling us out of the well using the rope, but the person inside the well must also hold the rope. So there's both. There's Krishna's mercy, there's also our personal endeavor. Both must be there. That is what causes the link. Otherwise, that link is not found. The link becomes incomplete. So therefore, but we have to understand that even in that, between holding the rope and the person who's throwing the rope, who is glorified? The person throwing the rope. Because ultimately, that is mercy that's descending. And the person is saved ultimately because of the desire of the person outside the well to pull the person out of the well. He is the main factor. But still, there is something that the person inside the well needs to do to save himself too. So this is Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, where the mercy of the Supreme Lord is ultimately what will allow us to become liberated. The mercy of the Supreme Lord is ultimately what will deliver us. Krishna's mercy is what will ultimately deliver us. But we still have to perform some endeavor to qualify for that. And when one either stops performing that endeavor or considers that endeavor to be everything, forgets about the mercy of Krishna, then in devotional service also, there is yoga chalita manasaha. Even in devotional service, one has the chance of falling down. Because one is still allured by those temptations. But if one constantly recognizes the fact that one is helpless, and one is very deeply regretful of being allured by these ill-conceived ideas that the living entity has to enjoy this material world, then one constantly prays to the Supreme Personality of Godhead to engage Him in His service. And that constant praying, that constant meek feeling of humility, that I'm helpless, Krishna, and I'm trying, and all this endeavor that I'm performing in Krishna consciousness, to be Krishna conscious, to achieve self-realization, is me trying to show you that I really want to be saved. So please save me. Please protect me. And a devotee must have confidence that Krishna will save one. Krishna will protect one. Why? Because the process of devotional service is very powerful. We see that in the story of Ajamil. We think sometimes, in Krishna consciousness, whenever we go through this, whenever we go through yoga chalita manasaha, whenever we go through deviation from the transcendental path, we become very morose. We sometimes may feel even discouraged. But we should understand that even, and we may think, well, is there any hope for a person like myself? I'm so fallen, and I'm such a rascal. I have willfully and voluntarily acted in ways that are detrimental to my spiritual advancement. Where is there hope for me? We might need more chairs up here. So, where is there hope? But for instance, therefore in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are stories of like persons like Ajamil. Ajamil is the story of a person who initially born into a righteous family, ended up giving up his wife, giving up his children because he wanted the association of a prostitute. He kicked his parents out of his house. He kicked his wife. He kicked his good wife. She didn't do anything wrong. He kicked her out and he invited this prostitute in. Then in order to maintain that prostitute and the children that he produced from her, what did he do? He engaged in all kinds of abominable activities. He was a murderer. He was a thief. He was, into intoxication. He was deceitful. He was everything that we can imagine to be wrong. Such a person, at the time of death, because of good fortune, even though he was attracted to his son, and he called out his son's name, because he had named his son Narayana, a name of Krishna, immediately he was saved at the time of death. And what did he do? He took to the process of Krishna consciousness seriously after that. Now, when he took to the process of Krishna consciousness seriously, he attained perfection. There could not be, at least we cannot compare ourselves to the amount of sinful activities that Ajamil had done. At least none of us in this room have hopefully murdered someone, killed someone. That's really bad. Ajamil did that, not just once, twice. He was regularly doing things like this. So very, very, very sinful person. Such a person at the age of 88 takes up to the process of Krishna consciousness seriously and goes back home, back to Godhead. That means he was able to purify his existence. He was able to overcome his conditioning. So no amount of our conditioning can stand in front of, Krishna's, the powerful potency of devotional service. So this is the main point that Srila Prabhupada is driving over here. That he says that out of these three methods, the path of Bhakti Yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. In this method, one is completely aware of Krishna's potency and one takes full shelter and surrender of Him. And therefore, one can become liberated. One can become saved. Otherwise, the other processes are just very difficult. They're difficult simply because one does not take shelter of Krishna. One does not take shelter of the Supreme Powerful. The Supreme Powerful, Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of everything, the Supreme Absolute Truth, the Supreme Being, can easily deliver us. But He doesn't do so unless we want to become delivered. And in Bhakti Yoga, Yoga Chalita Manasaha literally refers to the mentality of one not wanting to be delivered. How does that happen? There is a lecture by Bhakti Vikas Maharaj on this very verse. It's called Falling Down and Getting Up. It's a little old lecture, but it's a really, really good lecture, and I highly recommend everyone to listen to that. And Maharaj speaks over there. He speaks about the point, yes, we should not fall down. But what if we have fallen down? What to do? What to do after that? So in that lecture, Maharaj describes that even after one falls down, what does one do? One has to still perform the process of Krishna consciousness. You have to reapply yourself to the process again. But then what is real fall down? Real fall down is Yoga Chalita Manasaha, that he has deviated from the desire to link oneself with the Supreme. He has deviated from that desire. He no longer desires to become perfect in Krishna consciousness. He no longer desires to overcome his conditioning. He now wants to justify that conditioning. He wants to live with it. He He may say that I want to be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. I do not want to be born again as a forgetful living entity in this material world, with a material body, with a material mind, with the misconception that I am this body. He may say that, but he no longer has the mentality of actively trying to link oneself with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And what is that linking? That linking is the activities whereby he can re-establish the lost link, which is the performance of the practice of devotional service, which is the performance of the practice of Krishna consciousness, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, reading the books, associating with the devotees, following the four regulative principles. He loses the mentality of wanting to follow these things. That is Yoga Chalita Manasa in Bhakti Yoga. Whereas, in the other processes, that Yoga Chalita Manasaha literally means that, one basically strays completely away from the process of Bhakti Yoga. But from the practice of yoga itself. And also in the other processes of knowledge and mystic yoga, when one deviates, it takes a long time to get back to the state of advancement that one was previously. It's not like you just jump right back in. You have to go through, again, because you're dependent on your personal endeavor, and when you lose that endeavor, then you have to redevelop, you have to re-strengthen that resolve. And it's not easy to do that. But in Krishna consciousness, that's not the case. One may fall down, but still, because one is dependent on the mercy of Krishna, if one flings oneself back at the lotus feet of the spiritual master and Krishna, their mercy is always available, and that mercy can be accessed again. And one can resume one's Krishna consciousness without feeling that hope is lost. But if one loses that mentality, loses that thing, anyways, it is what it is. I actually don't even think that this is actually really practical. It's like, I don't think that, I don't want to perform Krishna consciousness anymore. One normalizes one's fallen nature. One normalizes that. One normalizes lackadaisical approach towards strictly following the process of devotional service. It's like, I don't think rising early in the morning, anyways, it's like, I'm okay. I'm happy with where I am. This kind of mentality, whether that could be in anything in Krishna consciousness. When one develops that is Yoga Chalita Manasaha. At that point of time, one is really fallen. So that time one does not get up, because one basically just continues lying down. Just never really gets up. So that is very unfortunate, and one should avoid that. That is the main thing. But otherwise, Bhakti Yoga is a very simple process to follow, and it's very powerful too. But when we lose the mentality that, where we want to remain surrendered to Guru and Krishna, then there is Yoga Chalita Manasaha. We forget and we deviate. So, therefore, one has to be careful in Krishna consciousness. One has to always constantly, therefore Prabhupada said, a devotee should always be afraid of Maya. Afraid of Maya doesn't mean that, we are, we fear. No, it's not that we fear, but more that we understand that Maya is actually superior to us. And that Maya, the illusory energy, superior in the sense that Maya, the illusory energy of Krishna, can very easily influence us. And therefore, we always should pray to Krishna. That prayer must always be there every time we are chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. O Krishna, O energy of Krishna, please engage me in your service. Why please engage me in your service? Because we understand we ourselves do not have any ability or capability to perform service without their mercy. Therefore, we need their mercy to perform service. And that service is what will give us eternal life, knowledge, and bliss. And we need that. We want that. So this is the process of Krishna consciousness. And it all begins and ends with chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I'll stop here. If there are any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. Any questions?
Can you give that to Bhakta Charandeep?
Yes, Charandeep?
I actually have a question.
You have a question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, okay, give it to him. I saw him first.
Hare Krishna.
Yes.
Prabhu, so austerity is performed by yogis. They perform austerities to transcend. And I mean, they are not recommended for us.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, we have to perform austerities to... so what kind of austerities are better for us?
Our austerity, Srila Prabhupada said, is following the four regulative principles and following the order of the spiritual master. The spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada writes that an easygoing life and Krishna consciousness go ill together. So, generally the spiritual master's instructions, they involve some austerity to follow. It involves austerity to rise early in the morning every single day. Left by ourselves, we'll just sleep. It involves austerity. It involves austerity to follow the four regulative principles because it's very easy to break them. And it produces a sense of instant happiness. But actually that happiness is the source of greatest misery. And it conditions us, it makes us forgetful of Krishna. Apart from that, there are other things, such as taking only prasadam. Associating with the devotees can also be austere in some ways, because if you are in association of sincere devotees, they don't let your anarthas just sit there. They keep pointing things out.
Yeah.
And that's austerity to hear all that. It's actually sometimes it's the biggest austerity. It's like, because it's like, they really go at you and, but ultimately they love you. But to stay in the association of devotees is austerity. And to assist in the mission of the spiritual master is austerity also. Because the spiritual master engages us in different services to propagate his mission. And sometimes those are not the exact services we want to do. We want to do something else. I might like to do one particular service, but spiritual master wants me to do this particular service, I have to do it. When there is a need, we have to execute that. These are all austerities in Krishna consciousness.
So as we progress, are we supposed to increase the austerities?
Sorry?
As we progress, are we supposed to increase the austerities?
As we progress, are we supposed to increase the austerities? As we progress, we have to increase our service. We should increase our attachment to Krishna. We should increase our, and if there is more austerity due to that, so be it. If not, we don't care. The point is, we are not focused on increasing austerity. We do live simple lives. We don't want to live complicated lives. But other than that, we are not trying to, it's not like we're sitting in the ashram and it's winter and every day we turn the thermostat down by 1 degree. Oh, yesterday I had it at 74. Today it's got to be 73, 72, 71, and turn it to 55. No, it's like we don't do those kind of stupid things. We don't artificially try to make austerity doesn't necessarily mean making your life difficult. Austerity can actually be very blissful things. In fact, actually everything in Krishna consciousness is blissful. It seems austere to us because we're conditioned. But austerity doesn't directly mean that devotees have to like live lives that just like suffering. Because I mean, you don't have to create suffering; it comes automatically in the material world. We don't have to create that. So we don't try to increase austerity artificially, unnecessarily. If it's required for service, we'll do it. And we don't try to seek enjoyment also artificially. We should know. So that requires some guidance, some intelligence. Yes, Prabhu.
It seems like when one undergoes sometimes, there's a change in mindset, just like you were mentioning these yogis, when they sit around the fire, there's like a self inspiration. It's like he's inspired to do that. So like it seems like also within Krishna consciousness, if one is not inspired to do that, then it becomes like almost like feels like a heavier. It feels like a burden more than inspiration. You feel like you're dragging your feet. Yeah. So like the yogis are able to do that because they're like, well, I'm doing this. I can stop if I want to, but I'm doing it. There's like that level of, for them, I guess there's that feeling of control and like, so it seems like there's like if one has a change in mindset, then it's easier to perform the austerity. Easier in the sense that it feels like you're, I don't know how to kind of like put that into words almost. It's like you're actually engaging in that because of inspiration, not engaging in it out of like fear or out of like absolute like, fear or need.
Yeah, see, ultimately, a devotee may also, for instance, one particular devotee recognizing their attachment to, say, sweets, and realizing, see, I love these sweets, but me personally, I'm still thinking that, this sweet, although prasadam is prasadam, and rice is also prasadam, sweet is also prasadam, I like sweet prasadam more than rice prasadam. And in that sense, and okay, we are not Mayavadis in the sense that we consider it all to be the same, but ultimately, one realizes that if one is maintaining attachment to something, then that one's senses are attracted to, then one is going to remain in this material world. So that particular devotee, just to, cultivate some level of tolerance, may give up eating sweets for a month. But even there, one has to do all these austerities. These austerities are allowed, but these austerities have to be done in a manner that one does not forget Krishna, meaning that one is still able to perform one's service to Guru and Krishna. That service is uninterrupted, and one does not ruin one's health in the process. If one does these two things or risks these two things in the name of austerity, then one is doing these things in the mode of passion without proper consideration. And when done in that manner, what Chandanacharya was saying, changing that mindset, that's what helps. Changing that mindset. Well, I actually survived without eating sweets for 1 month. Actually, I'm alive. And I'm okay. See, it gives a level. Like sometimes, if you do some austerity, what you might initially, it might seem like impossible. But, and sometimes this is like what you do. Like for instance, devotees are going to go on pilgrimage. This is a good time to do some things like this. On pilgrimage, when you're in the in the dham or something, you read so much, or you chant a lot. You perform these intense devotional practices that otherwise you would not do. We chant 64 rounds. We read a lot in the dham. So why? Because then by performing these things, one gets taste, one develops a different mindset, because until that point of time I was like, oh, I hate to read. Whenever I pick this book up, I fall asleep. It's like, my God, But then, so that devotee is like, okay, I'm going to put myself through the austerity. And I'm going to go through an austere program right now. For these many days, I'm going to read, and he does it in a manner that doesn't turn his life upside down. He says, okay, I'm going to read 3 hours every single day. And for that particular devotee, that's austere, like anything, because he's not used to reading. And he has this mindset, maybe coming from his background previously, coming into Krishna consciousness. He hated reading, he hated books. He didn't like the spelling of books. So he brings that mindset, not able to connect with Prabhupada's books, but he understands this is not a good mentality to have. It's against the devotional principles. So he has to change that mindset. So that's why we sometimes read these processes of dhyana yoga and this and that, because the principles of the different processes of yoga can be applied within bhakti yoga in Krishna consciousness in a manner that it helps us serve Guru and Krishna better. Those are the kinds of austerities that we can perform. But ultimately it is because one is trying to increase one's attachment to serving Guru and Krishna. Okay, Nick.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, this aspect of mercy you were speaking about, Guru Maharaj actually, or His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami, he gives a lecture called Special Mercy where he says that the mercy comes with the instructions, by following the instructions of the Guru. So my question is that you see like two disciples, they follow the instructions of the Guru, but one receives the mercy but the other doesn't. A good example is like Ban Maharaj and Prabhupada. I was reading Leela Amrita,
Ban Maharaj and Prabhupada?
No, Ban Maharaj, I think he went to the West,
right,
but then he wasn't successful in actually preaching to the Westerners, but Prabhupada was. But they both followed the instructions, but however, one was successful and the other wasn't. So why is it that, although the mercies and the instructions, certain devotees are endowed with the mercy, but others aren't?
Well, in that particular example, one did not. Because although he did go to the West, when he came back, that particular personality who you're referring to, he wrote a book about his experience of going and trying to preach Krishna consciousness in the West and never referred to his spiritual master even once in that book. When Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur read that book, he was so furious that, he basically rejected that disciple. Srila Prabhupada, on the other hand, was never under the influence of illusion, thinking that he is the doer and he is spreading Krishna consciousness. He always thought that it was his spiritual master. And you see that in that song, even before he lands in the United States. He says, Krishna tava punya habe bhai. He says, E punya kori be habe, Radharani kushi habe. What is that? Radharani kushi habe. Dhruva ati boli tamatai. And then, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Sachi Sutta Priya ati, Krishna Tulya Jar Seva Nai. And then he says, he says, by his strong desire, the holy name will spread, throughout the lands. And so he's very clear by whose mercy he's going to be able to spread Krishna consciousness. That is because of his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. Therefore he was successful. There is no question of not having success when one follows the instructions of the spiritual master. It is not possible. Now, the success, what is that success? What is the success in following the orders of the spiritual master? The success is that the spiritual master is pleased. That is the success. It is not the numerical value of one's service that matters. It is whether the spiritual master is pleased. Therefore, Lord Rama was pleased by the service that the great monkeys did by lifting huge stones, and also with the squirrel who was just lifting some particles of sand. The point is the attitude was the same. So the pleasure of the spiritual master is the cause of success, or is the success. So, okay, anything from the Matajis? Anything from the women? No. Anything more from the men? Yes, Nali.
Should austerities be approved, I guess, through your authorities? Because it seems like some people take up austerities in the mode of passion. Like, say someone's late a few days, all of a sudden they're waking up at 2 a.m., they're in the temple room fried out in the beginning, like, just like really passionate kind of thing or something. It happens. I don't know.
Yeah, it's better to do it. It's better to do it under the guidance of senior devotees. Definitely better to do it under the guidance of those under whom's guidance and care one is performing devotional service, because they're more experienced and they can guide us better, because we are trying to achieve something by doing that. They can help us achieve it better. But if out of pride we think, I'm going to do this by myself, I know I'm going to prove myself. Actually, there's another nonsense. We are going to prove ourselves to the spiritual master, or prove ourselves to those who are more experienced than us. You're proving nothing. You're proving that you're another big fool. I mean, that's what we are actually. It's like we only prove that more by being foolish. Because, this thing that, I'm going to do it, I'm going to show I'm like the man, and this and that. This is all like mundane. And devotees are not impressed with those kind of things. They become more concerned because they see that attitude. It's the same attitude that causes Yoga Chalita Manasa. He has the same thing. Because that's the mystic yogi and the jnana yogi, he has the same problem. I cultivate this, I'm going to understand this by my intelligence, I'm going to perform austerities and I'm going to perfect myself. And they're all in that mentality, which is why they're not pleasing to Krishna. They don't recognize, they don't cultivate humility in the process of yoga. So therefore in Bhakti Yoga that emphasis is so much on humility. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Trinadapi sunichena taror iva sahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sada harihi. That he says, who can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly? One who is more tolerant than a tree and humbler than a blade of grass. So that's not just figurative. That's that takes a lot. But it's actually very blissful if one surrenders. But we're very rebellious souls. That's the problem. Okay. All right. You have one more thing?
I'll just make a comment.
Yeah.
I liked your example about the well, because that's like, it seems like to be
that's Bhakti Siddhantas, yeah.
It seems to be a big schism between like Eastern teachings where you have like karma involved, and also like surrender to God through service. Because in the Western world it seems like a lot of people say, just by surrendering to God and whatever, I don't know what that means. That doesn't mean any service involved, just having faith, and that seems...
Well, I mean, there's this debates there from the early days in Christianity also. Saint Paul debated with the apostles, the disciples of Jesus. Can you believe? It's quite something to debate with the disciples of Jesus that your understanding of the teachings of Jesus is wrong. So that doesn't really sit well with me, at least. And I don't want to say anything more than that, but it's like, and the debate is mercy all that's required, or does mercy need to be accompanied by the works? This is how they call it in the Bible, the works. So the disciples of Jesus, the apostles, were making the argument that mercy has no meaning without accompanying by the works, meaning that one has to show. One has to show that if you've received mercy, then you have to display that. You have to show, you have to act according to someone who has received that. But Saint Paul was arguing, no, mercy alone is enough. So, yeah. But it's found in, at least Sri Vaishnavas have a split in this regard. A huge, major split right down in the middle. It's not in Gaudiya Vaishnavism that we follow, but yeah, it's a misconception. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains.
Yeah, it seemed like when Srila Prabhupada would discuss with theologians, he would like emphasize to get them to the platform of service and not just mercy. So he would never belittle religions, which is something we should be careful with, I suppose.
It would never be what?
He would never belittle a religion. He would just encourage them to serve their God in a higher capacity.
Yeah, that you have to follow. If you claim yourself to be a follower, then you have to follow. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah.